This is Faisal for Lights Out, proudly sponsored by Spartans Law, and this is episode 2 of the Monday Night Debate Show. Delighted to be joined by one of Lights Out's most valuable members, arguably the man that plays the most biggest role in Lights Out, you know, the face of Lights Out. I don't know how much more I can big him up, because if I don't big him up enough tonight...
Just say MVP, that's more than enough.
The MVP of Lights Out, Mohsin Gulsher, aka Ronald Jeremy. Ron, how you doing, mate?
Very well, thank you. Good to be back on the show again, mate.
Yeah, it's. I mean, look, you kind of like, you remind me a lot of an injury-prone footballer. Like, 1 minute you're available, the next minute you're not available. It's worrying, man. Like, it's a lot of inconsistency. I get a lot of hate mail because of you from the fans. Like, what's going on? You know, surely there's got to be something behind this inconsistency of yours.
Look, you say that about Oxlade, but then he pulls out some good performances as well from time to time. So it's
well, rather than scoring 10 or 15 goals a season, don't you think now's the time where you should be looking at, you know, Salah's numbers, like 20, 30, you know, I'm talking proper numbers, not like Ronaldo's tapping merchant goals, you know. I'm
goal's a goal, mate. Either you scored it from 1 yard away or a fucking 30 yard. You only get one goal for it, mate.
A goal's a goal. Fair enough. I'll take that. Anyway, Ron, how you been, man?
I'm very well. Yeah, I'm really excited for the topic tonight. I you know, when you messaged me and said this is what you wanted to do it on, I was well on there. This is something I'm passionate to talk about.
Was you well on it because of the topic or because of the feed that you're getting behind the scenes?
No, the topic, mate.
Fair enough. Well, listen, Ron, it's good to have you back after another disappearing act. Before we get started, just wanted to remind the viewers out there, if they haven't already, please hit that subscribe button and hit the bell for notifications on more Lights Out boxing content. And if you want to know more about Lights Out, the links are below in the description. This is episode 2 of the Monday Night Debate Show. Last week's debut episode was boxing versus MMA. Today is something a lot different that we're going to be talking about. So today's episode is going to be based on this. Why is Rocky considered one of the greatest sporting movies of all time? Bit of a wrong banner I've just put up there. We're going to be asking the fans today the simple question: out of 6 tremendous movies, which is Rocky's best movie? Just want to clarify that we're not going to be including the Creed movies, the sort of spin-off after Rocky movies, which of course features Michael B. Jordan, aka Adonis Creed Johnson, who plays the part of Apollo Creed. But yeah, Ron, when you talk about Rocky, what's the first thing that comes to your mind?
Adrian! Oh, brilliant. I think everyone's got to shout that out at some point, you know, with knowing about Adrian. I remember that. Man, look, where do I start? I mean, it's an iconic movie of its time, isn't it? I mean, Sylvester Stallone was a struggling actor. That was his first big break. And I've watched a documentary about the making of Rocky movie, and he came up with the idea and the script. They were willing to pay him just for the script. They didn't want him to be acting in it. And he took a big loss on that initially, because they wanted someone else to play in it. And no, fair play to Sylvester Stallone. He stuck to his guns, and look, he's made a movie that we remember very fondly for our, you know, during our childhood. I remember watching Rocky for the first time. I don't know about you, but I love the training montages. You know, doing the press ups and and doing the skipping rope, and thinking, "Yep, I'm ready to go in the playground and beat somebody up."
I don't think I kind of went on that level, Ron. But no, I remember a couple of months ago you kind of like told me a bit about the actual setup for Rocky and how the producers wanted to buy the actual storyline off of him.
Yeah.
And he was a struggling actor at the time.
Mm.
And a stat for you, it done over $225 million when it was released in terms of money, and obviously it went on to be a a franchise, if you want to call it that, and it went on to release another further 5 movies, phenomenal boxing movies, you know, inspiring movies as well. And I think the whole start of the actual Rocky movies, the concept of the first one, you know, a local club fighter gets picked out from a book from fellow champion Apollo Creed, and he says it's the name, the Italian Stallion, which is why I'm going to call this guy out and give him a shot at the world title on Thanksgiving. Probably the biggest mistake he ever made in the movie, because he proved to be a proper Achilles heel for Apollo in both fights. But listen, nonetheless, you could talk about why Rocky is considered one of the greatest movies of all times, but which is what we're obviously going to speak a bit about today, about the Rocky movies, and we're going to obviously debate on which is the best out of all 6. But obviously, we're not going to just like ask the question and then just sort of dive into the answer. We're going to talk a bit about the movies, debate about certain scenes, certain opponents. Point 2 of the debate is which one of Rocky's opponents would be a force in today's heavyweight division. Now, listen, there's no denying it that all 4 of his opponents were a bunch of rough bastards. You know, they all had this sort of own story at the time. You had Apollo Creed, who was the undefeated heavyweight champion of the world. Then you had Clubber Lang, who was...
Can I just add about, Apollo Creed, how many nicknames did he have?
The master of disaster, the king of sting. Yeah, I remember Rocky saying in Rocky 4, have you got enough nicknames there? And then you had Clubber Lang, who was the undefeated, hungry fighter, which Mickey called him. And then you had the big Russian from Russia in Ivan Drago, the Olympic boxing champion.
Yep.
And then you sort of had the next heir to the throne, the guy that gave Rocky a second chance, but had his head fiddled with by the Duke in, Tommy Gunn. So I think all the characters.
That one fighter, man, Union Kane.
The paper champion. If that's the case,
the champion, man. Let's not.
Mazel had Cameo's dad, Spider Rico, in there. So you know, there's a host of thrilling names that Rocky went in the ring with. But if I had to pick an opponent, for me it'd have to be Ivan Drago. Listen, as long as he didn't fail a drugs test, I reckon he would have caned today's heavyweight division. The guy was just, his character was a freak. You know, his punching power was ridiculous. And he just had that intimidating fear about him. And I think what really set up Rocky 4 to be such a successful movie was that you had Rocky 1 and 2, you had Apollo Creed, who was never short for words, Clubber Lang in Rocky 3, that was, you know, a big talker, and Tommy Gunn was just this hungry fighter. But it was different with Ivan Drago. He did his talking in the ring, and you've seen in that very, very first fight of his against Apollo Creed, this was not going to be an easy opponent to beat, and this was going to be a task which was very uphill for Rocky. But if I had to pick an opponent, for me, it would definitely be Ivan Drago that would handle today's heavyweight division. What about you?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with Ivan Drago. Tall, you know, technically correct fighter, rangy, and he was, like, as you called him earlier, a rough bastard. He's very typical of an Eastern European fighter, you know, just the persona, how they presented him as a man of very few words, does all his fighting in the ring. But good shout. Boxer I would go for is going to be Clubber Lang. Just that raw, ferocious, come forward kind of fighter. Reminds me a bit of Deontay Wilder, you know, just that kind of, that attacking kind of presence about him. And just, you know what, he's Deontay Wilder meets Dillian White. That would be Clubber Lang for me.
I think, you know what was a bit of a letdown about Clubber Lang is, I remember during the third movie, they kind of like, when him and Apollo, Rocky and Apollo were watching clips. If anyone doesn't know, Apollo went on to become his trainer after Mickey had died, but I'm pretty sure everybody knows this, but just throw the stats out there. And I think they kind of like let themselves down in terms of they found out his weakness. Take him past 3 rounds and he's yours. He gasses out very quick. Whereas in Apollo Creed, you never knew his weakness. You never knew what Ivan Drago's weakness was. You never knew what Tommy Gunn's weakness was. Well, in the end, you know, it was Rocky knew everything about Tommy Gunn. He trained him to be that fighter. But I just think they kind of let themselves down. I mean, I know I did a poll today on our Instagram, and a lot of people have chosen Rocky 3. But for me, I would have loved to have seen that fight go further than 5 or 6 rounds. I believe in the rematch, we're talking about like there were actual fights in the rematch of the actual movie. Rocky stopped him after round three or four, and it just kind of like he gassed very quickly. So yeah, listen, Clubber Lang's personality would be brilliant to have in today's dressing room. Don't get me wrong, they all would be. But just think if you had to put like, if you had stamped down an opponent that you'd want in today's division, you look at what Usyk's done. He's come from Ukraine. I mean, these Eastern Europeans, man, you wouldn't want a strong Eastern European like that in your locker room today. But listen, nonetheless, all the opponents played a brilliant role. You know, Apollo, for me, his press conference with Ivan Drago in the 4th one, some of the things he was saying to him, like proper wind-up merchant. Move on to obviously the next point, but before we do that, just read out a couple of comments from our fans that have joined today. This is from N. I love the Rocky films. I know it's not everyone's favorite, but I love the 4th one. Another comment from N as well. Drago would probably do well if he was a real boxer. He's done well as an actor, and he's definitely got the physique to become a boxer. This is from Boxing TV. Shout out to Boxing TV. Has to be one with the late Tommy Morrison. I spoke to his wife recently on my show. It's crazy that they never had HIV, and she has proof. Oh, okay.
Well, I mean, talking of Tommy Morrison, his boy was he was fighting as well, wasn't he?
He's fighting right now, Ravel Morrison. Yeah.
Yeah, Ravel Morrison. You sure that's not the Man United player you're thinking of there?
Oh, sorry, it might be. I don't know. Sorry, my bad. Well, he was rubbish anyway. But no, I do know Tommy Morrison's son is currently fighting right now. That's definitely an interview I'd love to check out. So I'll head over to Boxing TV sometime later on during the night. Boxing lover, Drago, aka Canelo. I think I know what. I
don't see the resemblance.
I think I know what terms he means by Drago, aka Canelo. Anyway, moving on. Ron, I remember a few months ago you did like a shout-out video to your brother, and you recreated one of the scenes from Rocky, i.e., when he's in the gym in Rocky 5, and
I mean the scene that you're speaking of, it's a very touching scene, and it shows the kind of the bond between a trainer, coach in Mickey, and Rocky, his kind of protege. And I mean, it's a bit of a tearjerker where he's inspiring him. I think then it's black and white. I think he's in the ring, training him for the Apollo fight, and he gives him a gift, and it's the necklace with the boxing glove on it. And he said, "Look, Rocky Marciano gave this to me, and I'm kind of giving it to you." So I think those that are involved with boxing, trainers spend a lot of time with their fighters, and they do build up that bond, that kind of relationship, and it does kind of sometimes mirror a father and a son relationship. So that scene always gets me every time. Obviously you can see how upset Rocky is when he loses Mickey, in Rocky 3, and that led to his lack of performance against Clubber Lang.
One thing I really liked about that relationship is it never started off in the best ways during the first film. It was like Mickey, I wouldn't say hatred, but he had like he was very angry towards Rocky leading up to the first fight.
Potential. Yeah, he's like, you could have been something, but you're a bum.
Yeah. A line currently used by WBC heavyweight champion of the world, Tyson Fury. My most inspiring scene in the Rocky movies, there's so many to name, but
I mean, all the training montages.
Montages.
Which one? Okay, out of the training montages, let's break this down.
It's Rocky 4 by far.
Is that the one where he's running in the snow?
Yes, we're going to go on to that in a bit, and I'm going to tell you why. But I think favorite, it's most inspiring scene from these Rocky movies for me. It has to be when Apollo Creed and Rocky are watching their second fight, the build-up towards Apollo's first fight with Drago. And Apollo just kind of like, he goes on a bit of a rant where, people remember us when we're on top. But the second we leave this business, we become like a radio where they could turn us on and off when they want to. And I think that's something that we don't get in boxing movies much these days. I know Rocky 6 was like a comeback fight for him, but we don't get much talk of these fighters or ex-fighters, how they feel when they leave the sport and how they feel the public is towards them, which is why that's a scene that I really enjoyed. And I remember at that scene, Rocky was telling him to maybe postpone it. And then Apollo was like, to everybody, it's just an exhibition, but to me, it's personal. I've not fought in 5 years. My last fight, you beat me for the world title. And if you remember the movie, the fourth one closely, Apollo admits that, things went sour with his current wife at the time. He'd been divorced. So that scene really inspired me, because we kind of got to feel like what it was for a fighter who had not fought in years, and he'd all of a sudden been forgotten about by the public, and what it meant to him. Read a few more comments out. 1892 Reds podcast, fellow Liverpool fans, my favourite is Rocky 3. Yeah, listen, a lot of people have said today that their favourite is Rocky 3. Boxing TV again has to be when Rocky is training in the snow. It's unreal. Another comment from Boxing TV, Hearts on Fire. That is my favourite song.
Yeah.
And then N comments back where he loves that scene. I think he's talking about my scene where Apollo and Rocky are sort of having a heart-to-heart before the fight with Ivan Drago. The main point of the debate, Rocky 1 to 6, which is the greatest Rocky movie of all time. I mean, Ron, Man United are in 7th, Liverpool are currently in 2nd, so I think it's fair that you go first.
Okay. Rocky 1.
Okay, why?
Yeah. It's the origins, isn't it? It's, the build-up. He's a nobody. He's got nothing to lose. He takes this this lottery ticket, you can call it, of a chance against the heavyweight champion of the world. And it's interesting when he gets offered the fight, and he's like, listen, he thought he's going to use him as a sparring partner, and he had no clue that he's going to fight the heavyweight champion of the world for the actual title. He goes, look, I'm not going to let him take any cheap shots at me. I'm going to, but he's like, no, you don't understand. We want you to fight for the thing. And then it kind of builds up his character, who he is. We know that he's kind of involved with the mafia as a heavy, getting people to death. Then you see the famous scenes when he's running along the streets of where is it? Philadelphia, isn't it?
Philadelphia, yeah.
Yeah. So we see that relationship between him and Mickey kind of, improve, and they get closer. And you see that love affair with Adrian kind of taking off, and then it doesn't really matter whether he won or lost. For him, it was like he went the full 15 rounds with the heavyweight champion of the world, and he's still barely standing. And yeah, that kind of set off the whole Rocky, the whole Rocky saga. That if it wasn't for that Rocky 1, if that Rocky 1 was rubbish, there wouldn't be 2, 3, 4, 5. We wouldn't have had these other amazing installments of the Rocky collection.
Yeah, listen, I agree with you. I think Rocky 1 was a fabulous movie, and obviously with every story there's a beginning, and of course there's an end. And that first movie, you mentioned about where he turned up to Apollo Creed's office thinking he was going to be asked to be sparring, and he said he won't take no, he won't back down, basically, be honored to fight the champion, and then he just straight up gets offered a shot at the world title. When do you see that happen in boxing? Never. No. You got Dillian White, who's been mandatory with the WBC for the last 50 years. This guy walks into the office. Promoters, man. That's what he wants to do. Yeah, and he needs to get Apollo Creed to be the world champion, because he was nice when it came out to handing world title shots, but
it was a mandatory. It wasn't a mandatory. It was what do you call it? Where you could pick and choose who you want to fight. Is that a mandatory? No, it's not a mandatory.
No, it's a voluntary defense.
Voluntary defense.
That's the one. There's a big word there for you, Ron. But no, I agree. And then obviously his whole aim throughout that fight is to go the distance. Because I remember the night before the fight, he wakes up and he says, "No one's ever been the distance with the champ, and if I can go the distance with the champion, that would be like a victory for me." And You mentioned about the running and the training and the bond that he builds with Adrian Stunner. One of the
Mickey as
most
well.
yes,
Yeah.
the best scene at that movie for me is when he goes into the meat house and he starts punching the meat up. If you're a fan of games consoles, PlayStation 2, I remember it released Rocky. The day it got released, I went and brought it with one of my brothers. And I still remember during career mode, funnily enough, they added that scene into the actual game where you're in a meat house and you're slaughtering these big ribs. And, it's just stuff like that. I think one of the most impressive things that Rocky did was its training clips. But Rocky 1, great movie. The fight was good, and then obviously, as you said, it went on from there. But this is a debate. You're going to say something. I'm going to say something totally opposite. My favorite Rocky movie of all time, Rocky 4.
Okay.
Just he starts off at, he's at home. He's got a big, nice house. He's retired. He's living a nice family life. Apollo Creed's retired. And then out of nowhere, this big Russian comes into the US. And and his trainer, who's been in so many, sorry, not his trainer, his manager, he's been in so many movies. He's been in one of the Rambo movies. He's been in one of the Halloween movies. Comes out and they call out Rocky Balboa. And what happens? Apollo Creed steps in, and we all know what happens from there. But I think why I rate Rocky 4 more than any of the other Rockies is simply because I'll give you a number of reasons. One, the fight was on Christmas Day. You'll never see that happen in your entire life. The only sporting event you'll see on Christmas Day is probably the Ashes in cricket. I've never seen another sporting event live on Christmas Day. And apart from that, the killing on EastEnders, which famously happens once a year as well. But what really stood out for me in terms of why Rocky was such a great movie, Rocky 4, is because he went and trained out of his comfort zone. You look at Rocky 3, yeah, he got taken from Philly to LA. Rocky 1 and 2, he was training in Philadelphia. But this one, he's running up mountains. He's lifting up these massive carriages with Adrian, Paulie, and Apollo's trainer in it at the same time. He's out in the cold with a massive axe cutting up wood.
Well, he was the B-side, wasn't he?
I remember
he just wanted that rematch. He wanted that fight with him because after obviously losing Apollo, so.
But I think
make those compromises. He had no choice to.
I remember the press conference in that movie after Apollo had died, and the journalist asked him, "When's this fight taking place and where?" And he goes, "December 25th in Russia." And the Paulie goes, "What? Are you nuts? Have you seen how cold it is in Russia that time of year?" But what some people don't seem to realize is he went there because he wasn't fighting just an average fighter. He was going in there with a machine. And he basically knew there was two ways that fight was going to end. Either somehow he beats Ivan Drago, which nobody, even his own wife didn't give him a chance. Even he beats Ivan Drago or he dies trying, which is what he said. He goes, "I'm going to go in there, and if I can't beat Drago, I'm going to die trying." And the fight itself, for 14 rounds, he takes an absolute battering. And we all know what happens in the end. He stops Ivan Drago, but you remember the hostile... Go for
How the referee didn't stop that fight?
It was an exhibition and it was non-sanctioned.
Yeah, I mean, the amount of times that Rocky drops...
Can you imagine the amount of...
The ref's going to call it, he's going to protect the fighter.
Can you imagine the amount of pay-per-view buys that would have done for Eddie Hearn? He would have made an absolute fields day on that fight. But for me, definitely one of the greatest.
Drago was up on points. If he stood if he stayed on his feet, he would have won that fight.
But you seem to remember, I think before round 15 when the
tide, yeah, you're right. The tide does turn.
His manager goes up to him and he goes, "Our people are cheering for him." At the start of the fight, he walks into the ring, Rocky, and he's getting booed left, right, and center. And when you ask people like me and you that we know, and you say to them, "What comes to your mind when you hear the national anthem of Russia?" They say Rocky 4. Because when Ivan Drago comes out to the ring, you hear the Russian national anthem. And then what makes that movie even better is round 15, the people of Russia start chanting for Rocky. So I think Rocky 4 was the best out of all the Rockies for a number of reasons. But you go with Rocky 1, I go with Rocky 4. Favorite scene from what was your favorite scene from
There's
Rocky
a lot of
4?
Rocky. I mean, each Rocky's got his own appeal, hasn't it? Rocky 2, the rematch with Apollo Creed, where Apollo Creed is a lot more determined to win this time, but Rocky does him. Rocky 3, we got the Clobber Lang, and and then Rocky 4, Rocky 5. A lot of people kind of really switched off then. They didn't really particularly enjoy that installment. I didn't, but I was going to watch it anyway. And then you obviously got Rocky 6 as well, which was another one to the collection.
Read a couple of comments here. 1892 Reds podcast. I've only seen Christmas Eve Scottish football. That's as close as it gets. Another comment from N. Agree 100% with Faisal. Reasons for loving Rocky 4. That's exactly how I feel about the film. And another one from the 1892 Reds podcast. Love Apollo's entrance living in America. Yeah, fantastic. The entrance was very good. Very good. It lasted longer than
Tyson Fury with his end. Yeah.
Tyson Fury's using it as well, and I was just about to say that Apollo's entrance lasted longer than his performance. I know you should have laughed at that because it ended in her horrific scenes. But now, for me, that's why Rocky 4 for me stands out as the best out of all 6. And before we end the debate, I just want to ask a quick question. Hopefully, we can get some more fans involved in this. Thoughts on the current Creed movies, and what other boxing movies do fans enjoy? Listen, I think the Creed movies are good. I like the concept of bringing back Ivan Drago and his son in the second one, and obviously I think Tony Bellew, as David Hayes says, at the time of their rivalry, they didn't even need to give you lines. They just said to you, "Go there, and just be yourself." They put some good characters in this movie. Bit of a spoiler for the third Creed movie. Apparently, Teofimo Lopez is going to be in it. So if that's the case, I'd love to see him and his old man in it, because we know when it comes to trash talking, them two are really high on the list. Other boxing movies that I enjoy. For me, definitely Southpaw. I'm a big fan of Southpaw. The Fighter, featuring Christian Bale and Mark Wahlberg. There's a host of boxing movies, that. Go for it, question.
There's a couple of movies that I absolutely love when it comes to boxing. $1 Million Baby.
Great movie. Yeah, Clint Eastwood, right?
Clint Eastwood and Hilary Swank. I thought that blew me away. That movie there is just the ending, just the storyline, and I just thought it was really well scripted. The way it was shot, absolutely love that movie. Another movie, this is mine and my brother's favorite. We love Raging Bull, with based on Jake LaMotta.
Robert De Niro, right?
Robert De Niro and was it Joe Pesci? I think they did a fantastic job in portraying Jake LaMotta and his career and his fights. Again, absolutely love that movie. What else? What else we got? You've mentioned Southpaw. Have you mentioned The Fighter?
Yeah, I mentioned The Fighter.
Yeah. That was based on Mickey Ward. Cinderella Man. I don't know if you've seen that one.
Yep.
That's really good movie. So, yeah. So I do love my boxing movies, but it's a shame, movies. But the games side of things, I'm hoping that PlayStation brings out a boxing game soon.
It's funny you said that, because the other day I bought a PlayStation 3. The reason why I bought my PlayStation 3 is because I've had Fight Night Champions sitting in my room for years.
Yeah.
I bought it, plugged it all up to the TV. That's the only game I've played since, and it is still a quality game. But I agree with you. It is time that EA Sports brought out another boxing game. There's so much talk on the ESP.
The Rocky boxing game was brilliant as well.
Very good, very good. But it is time we do see another boxing movie. Just read out a few more comments. This is N again. Yeah, that entrant was excellent. I love Fury's interpretation of it, turning it into a positive win. N again. Raging Bull is probably my second favorite boxing film behind the Rocky movies. Such a good film. Boxing lover. Rocky's entrance versus Tarver sucked. I think he's referring to Rocky 6. I didn't like Rocky 6. I didn't enjoy it.
That took it a bit too far. It was unnecessary.
A 57-year-old man coming out of retirement to fight the heavyweight champion of the world at the time.
Nathan the Line Dixon.
That's right. And Louis DeBella was in that movie as well.
Yeah.
And he had a bit of hair as well. Okay, Ron, before we bring the debate to an end, what makes a good boxing movie in your opinion?
I love a good backstory. I love a build up to the character,
which is why I pick Southpaw, because of the storyline, phenomenal storyline.
And this is why I pick $1 Million Baby as well. So for me, that's crucial. You think about the character. Sometimes they're fighting their own demons. Sometimes they've got other problems in their lives, and boxing's an outlet, and they turn it around for the positive. $1 Million Baby, absolutely. And the ending's quite sad, but the movie itself is fantastic. And obviously, it needs to be filmed realistically. I think Southpaw took it to a whole. It came on a long way. I mean, the Rocky movie, as brilliant as they are, let's be honest, their fighting scenes are slightly a bit unrealistic. With the
I remember watching.
I think Rocky. Maybe it's to suit the time of the public, what they were used to. So
I remember watching Rocky 2 years ago with one of my brothers, and he goes, "If this was a real fight, it'd have been stopped after 7-8 rounds because of the condition that they were in." But
I mean, how many times did Rocky get dropped in his career? I mean, does he have a chin? I mean, that's something.
More times than Amir Khan. But listen, 100%. You definitely need a good storyline to go over. It needs to be realistic. I'd love to see a British boxing movie be made. I mean, I know we had Billy Elliot that started off as a boxer and he turned into a ballet dancer. But if you know your boxing, many people recommend ballet dancing for boxing training. Apparently, good footwork. But listen, that's all we've got time for today on episode 2 of the Monday Night Debate Show. Ron, thank you very much for joining us, mate. A privilege as always having you on. Hopefully we'll get you on for next week's episode. We could talk about good coaching and definitely what we mentioned, Ralph Ranić and the clowns he's got working at Old Trafford. No, Ron, listen, banter as always. Really appreciate you coming on. And yeah, well, hopefully we'll see you soon, Ron. Hopefully we'll see you at the weekend for the podcast. But to the viewers out there, if you haven't already, please make sure you hit that subscribe button, like, comment, and share. Want to know more about Team Lights Out? Follow us on all the social media platforms. Check out Ron's Instagram, Facebook, Twitch, Tinder, whatever you want to find. I'm only joking, not on Tinder. He's a happily married man. Any platform you want to find him on.
Anyone wants Faisal's Grindr account, let me know.
Happily married man, okay? But yeah, listen, Ron, thank you very much for taking your time out to join us. And to the viewers out there, thank you very much for watching episode 2 of the Monday Night Debate Show.